Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. On this day, January 13th of the new year 2021, I am now officially calling this Academic Senate meeting to order. I'd like to take a moment before we start and just call for a moment of silence, not for necessarily any one thing in particular. Although Dr. Goswami informed the campus community today that we did lose a student in a violent shooting in our community. There was the insurrection of our nation's capital last week. We are once again starting our semester in a global pandemic with a lot of uncertainty. And then, of course, all of the other things that are too numerous to even list right now over the past year. So, and other students passed away recently as well. So I'd just like us all to take a moment and check in with ourselves, just arrive here at the meeting so that we can all do good work and have great discussion with a clear mind and heart during our time together today. So I'll give you all a minute. I'm going to call us back. Thank you so much for taking that moment with me, with yourself, with other. Let's get to work. All right. Last semester, we voted in, and let me share my screen with you all. Last semester, at I believe one of our last meetings, we voted in our Senate community values and finalized those. And so those are posted on our agenda as item 2.2. Should any of you need to refer to them for yourself or to check in with other folks during the meeting. As usual, I want to call out the wait, why I'm talking, why aren't I talking? Oftentimes we hear from the same folks during meetings. And so I just want to invite those of you that speak rarely to join in the conversation should you have something to add. Item 2.3, our Zoom meeting guidelines. As a reminder, we've relaxed these from as written to facilitate the meeting flow a little bit better. Please mute yourself throughout the meeting so that any background noise is limited. And then should you want to contribute to the discussion, please raise your virtual hand in the participants field. I think it changed, at least with my most recent update. If you're looking for it, you can look for it under the, what are they called? The emoticons or whatever. So it might have moved depending on which version of Zoom you have, but raise your virtual hand and then I will call on you and then you can unmute yourself to contribute to the meeting. So people are called in the order hands are raised. Item 2.4, at this time, I'll call for somebody to read the land acknowledgement, and I have an update about this in my president's report. So at this time, I would like to read our land acknowledgement for the meeting. If so, please raise your virtual hand. Michelle.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, the land that Santa Barbara City College sits upon, their home. We are honored to be guests upon this land and are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We want to thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Okay. Unless anyone has any issues at this time, we will accept the approval of the agenda as posted. There will be no items taken out of order today. We don't have any timed items. So we do have a change to the way that we are going to do public comments. So I will review that briefly. We voted in the resolution during our last meeting of the year of our last year, 2020. So as we all know, the Brown Act requires us to allow public participation in the meeting. So from here forward, because of the Senate resolution that we passed, we're going to discuss the public in two separate ways. First of all, there's the general public that has the right to speak at our meeting. So at the top of the meeting, we will call for public comments from the general public and the community campus as well, meaning that anyone that would like to give a public comment at the start of our meeting or at the beginning, or excuse me, or at the start of a discussion item before the Senate has weighed in, you must let me know by raising your virtual hand, or anyone that's leading our academic Senate meetings, so that you can give a comment of 3 minutes length then. In addition to that, members of our campus community are now allowed and invited and welcome to provide public comment throughout the meeting. It's going to be my job, and this is a change in our norms, so I might need a little reminder here and there as we get used to this new process, but I will be calling for comments from our campus community throughout the meeting, and especially in front of each discussion item. Members wanting to give members of our campus community wanting to give comments about items do not need to declare so at the beginning of our meeting. So at this time, now that I've explained our new process for public participation in our meeting, whether it's the general public, campus community, is there anyone that would like to provide public comments now or before a discussion item? If so, please raise your virtual hand in the participants field. Okay. And I'm not seeing any hand raises. For everyone else from the campus community, you will have a time to declare that you'd like to add a comment throughout the meeting. We have now moved on to item 4.1. The meeting minutes for our last meeting on December 9th have been posted and distributed. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to review them. So unless anyone has any updates, edits, corrections to those, we will accept those as posted. Any edits or suggestions? If so, please raise your virtual hand in the participants field. Okay. And again, I'm not seeing anyone. We will accept the meeting minutes as posted. Okay, President's report. All right, I have a couple of things written down so that I wouldn't forget, as I don't have a written report this week. Please expect that at the next meeting. All right, so the land acknowledgement. Since first email communication with the Chumash, when they wrote back to me, the Chumash chair, when she wrote back to me and indicated that the Chumash board were thinking about the land acknowledgement and communicating with each other as what they wanted to do with these, I have since emailed and followed up twice, and I have not heard back. So at this time, I'm going to be inviting Senator Garcia, who first brought this up, brought this idea to the Senate for consideration, to our next steering meeting to have a steering conversation about a way forward about what we want to do with our land acknowledgement, whether we want to keep it or what we want to do. So she's giving me a thumbs up, so she knows that invitation is coming. So that is what's going on with our land acknowledgement and my follow-up with that. Additionally, I am co-chairing the campus climate advisory council that brought to CPC previously after initial public comment by faculty member Guire Schuyler. So at this time, the other co-chairs and myself, which in somebody from the co-chairs are also, there's one representative from ALA and one from CSEA. We have landed on the fourth Thursday of every month for our campus-wide town hall meetings. So the fourth each month at 2:30 p.m., which means that our first campus-wide town hall meeting will take place on Thursday, January 28th at 2:30 p.m. You can either write this down now or expect an email from Hong announcing all of this. First town hall conversation will be focused around leadership as well as the institutional commitment to EDI. While we are providing overarching subject matter to discuss at these meetings, campus community members can bring anything to these meetings that they want to discuss. Also, please expect in that announcement email from Hong a Google form, where an anonymous Google form where campus community members can provide written comments to the co-chairs of this committee at any time, and as well as Hong is working on a website. So please expect more information about these things to come via email. As Academic Senate President, I sit on the Strategic Enrollment Management Committee, otherwise known as SEM. We will see a presentation next week at our next Academic Senate meeting about waitlists. It's going to be coming forward from your faculty representatives committee. So I am excited for you all to stop and hear what the work has been done there. We have a discussion item today about NTCC. So my president's report will just say that we are going to discuss NTCC, which is the Non-Teaching Compensation Committee, more later in the meeting. But I do want to report that a lot of my break was spent thinking about this committee, doing work for this committee, campus or leadership stipends and things like that. So we'll talk about that more later in the meeting. And lastly, AP 4235, credit for prior learning. I said at the last Academic Senate meeting when we passed the AP and looked at the BP as well, that I will be sending that out to department chairs. I have yet to do that, but that is forthcoming to them. So that is all I want to say about my president's report. So if there aren't any clarifying questions from any of you at this time, we can move on to our liaison reports. However, I think our liaison reports are going to be very limited, if any at all. And sorry, I was going really fast. So are there any clarifying questions for me about anything I said? And if not, we'll move on to oral liaison reports for anyone that would like to provide one. And if there's any liaisons that do, go ahead and unmute yourself and provide your report.
Ray, I'll just mention it's on the agenda, but the sabbatical leave committee met.
Can't hear you, Robin.
Oh, you can't hear me now? Can you hear me now?
You keep going in and out. There, we heard that.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Jeez. So the sabbatical leave committee met yesterday, and I just wanted to emphasize that the Stanbeck Stroud Award, the nominations are on the agenda today, but they're on a pretty short schedule, and they will also need to be on a short schedule to choose a nominee to send to Senate. So hopefully everybody will get the word out to their divisions that those nominations are due pretty quickly.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that. Any other liaison reports?
The only thing I have to report you have later in the agenda, so we don't need to talk about it twice.
Perfect. Thanks, Pam. And I know there's no report from Ruth, Michelle, or Robbie. So we'll get going, I think. Excellent. Pamela, Dr. Ralston, we'll turn it over to you for your EVP report.
Super. So I submitted a written report, and I'm happy to take to try to limit too much conversation because I'm told that sometimes I do this report and it takes up too much time. So I want to point out the information at the top end, which was sent by email from Dr. Goswami and then followed up upon by deans to chairs and faculty working. We had great hopes in the middle of fall that we would be able to do some more in-person instruction this spring. Thanksgiving happened, Christmas happened, New Year's happened, and as you are well aware, we are spiking astronomically at the top of the purple tier. In order to do indoor instruction, we need to be in the red tier, and that only allows us at 25% capacity. So we're nowhere near yet where we need to be in order to get back face to face. This is an explanation about what's happening in the meantime. Our exceptional programs that are allowed under the workforce exemption are going forward in person. We are working toward an ability to do outdoor instruction with PE, and Kathy O'Connor and that whole team over there has been doing great work, and they did a good job in fall keeping students safe. So we're getting ready to roll that out for February 1. I want to talk a little bit about enrollment, but I'm going to come back to that because it's a different document. We are super excited that we sent off the institutional self-evaluation last night at 4 p.m. to Novato, California. And ACCJC now has our 258-page document and all of our evidence. We've worked collectively across the college for the last 18 months to bring that into being. And I'll remind you that we are honored to be part of a very small pilot project to transform the way we work with accreditation. So we will be experiencing our virtual formative assessment on March 5th. Our team will be visiting us through our document with each other on that day. And what they'll be doing is finding all of the places where we meet or exceed standards, which I'm sure will be many, and knocking those off a list. When they come to visit us in October, it will be about items where we are falling short of standard and the places we've put improvement plans out. And so they'll notify us after March and before October of where our areas of concern are. So you'll be hearing more about any of that following that March 5th visit. In the meantime, faculty need to take note. You need to have your student learning outcomes on each syllabus, and we'll be working to notify anyone if their distance education course has been tagged for review by the visiting team. So I'll follow up on that information widely so everybody gets it once we've been notified about what to expect. We made it through all of the curricular changes and the training for faculty to teach online, and we did a brilliant job of it. I'd like to thank again all the faculty on CAC, the Distance Education Help Team, Matt Kay for chairing that, Kathy O'Connor for weighing in with a lot of history about our distance education work, Lori Vasquez for help on accessibility, and our two stellar curriculum specialists who helped make it all possible. The bottom of the document, I've just aggregated a number of resources that I think are really helpful and important. And then let's go back up, and Ray, if you could show that enrollment report that we shared with Strategic Enrollment Management yesterday that we just added. And I'm going to make my screen big so I can see it. So we have been experiencing a downturn in enrollment, as you well know if you've been at the college longer than 3 or 4 minutes. We weren't expecting what happened to us as a result of COVID. So we had an uptick in enrollment in summer 20. So we had a number of people probably from across the state who enrolled in our online summer program. So we actually increased enrollment. We dropped in the fall, and we have dropped again going into spring 20, into spring 21. It was a bizarre thing to be spending time predicting how much smaller we were going to be and how short we might make it. And we came up with a prediction of -10%. And you can see that we're awfully close to what that number looks like. So as far as headcount goes in our California residents, and remember, those are the students for whom we receive apportionment. So when we talk about FTES, this is the figure that is relevant for that. The California residents are down 9% over last year's figures. Our out-of-state and international students are down by 38%. This number would actually be worse, except we've had a number of students across the country enroll. So we're actually increasing a little bit, or at least keeping steady with our students who are out of state. And then if we go down to units, can you scroll a little bit? Yeah. You can see this is kind of where the rubber meets the road on how apportionment works. So these are yesterday's numbers because we produced them for strategic enrollment management. We are down minus 11%. This may still move up. We deans and chairs have worked with faculty to consider more late starting classes for this semester. We recognize that shorter, deeper instruction has actually been very successful in the online environment. And we're working to make sure that we follow through on opportunities for students who need to complete something before the end of spring term. I had a great conversation with Jennifer Hamilton recently about why that's so valuable. So we may have more enrollment in that figure as we get a little closer to March. And we'll be processing our dual enrollments as we always do. And then here at the bottom of the page goes to show you how we've been trying to be more efficient given our downturn in enrollment. This is not, particularly from a faculty-centric view, this isn't great happy news. We are used to be at 1,800 sections. Last year, we were at 1,684, almost 1,700. You can see us smaller yet at 1,673, the number of sections we offered this spring. This is about trying to make the schedule the right size for the resources we have and the students who need to be here. Strategic enrollment management's been working diligently to try to find ways to help improve this. Deans and chairs and faculty have been doing a lot of work. The people who have been significantly disadvantaged by this are great part-time faculty who have lost sections. And so we're always really mindful about that cost. So that's my report. You can read through the written material that I submitted. This document is there for you. And you can also see a daily Argos report that I had attached from Sunday. If you want to see it, how these things kind of break out in a report format.
Thank you, Pamela. Michelle has her hand up for a clarifying question. Michelle, go ahead.
Pamela, I just had a quick question regarding in-person classes and whether there has been any discussion about offering them if all of the students and instructors have received the vaccination.
I think that's a great question. And later, should I be picking this up later in the agenda? Michelle, I don't mean to put you off.
Oh,
Please.
I'm checking with Ray on the agenda because I think we have an item deeper in the agenda that's going to be on COVID updates.
Yep.
Okay.
I would love for you to address that later, Pamela.
got it.
Okay, so Michelle, you hold that and I'll think about the question between now and then.
Other questions for Pamela at this time? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Pamela. So there were no requests to agendize items at future meetings, which brings us to our consent item for which we have 3 items on today. The PEC committee at our last meeting of the semester in the fall heard a proposal from Esther Frankel for the merging of 2 computer technology departments. Both departments are very much in favor of this. It was passed at PEC, and so now it is here at the Senate for your consideration. The bylaw revision. Last semester, we talked about a number of bylaws that needed, or not necessarily bylaws, but things within our bylaws that needed to be brushed up and cleaned up. And they were just basically a couple fixes here and there. So I was an ad hoc committee of 1 over the break. And so now the ad hoc committee is ready for you all to consider the changes. If you've reviewed the document, the changes were highlighted within the document along the side so that you can see what was changed. And the last item, Senate appointment. Senate steering had a conversation about our BPAP appointments and realized that it would be extremely advantageous to have a a sitting senator, a member of the Senate, be the third faculty rep on BPAP. And so Robbie Fisher was decided to be that appointment. So that will go through if the Senate approves. So with that, that's our consent agenda. So remember that if there's any item on this consent agenda that we need to discuss, a senator must make that known, and we'll remove it from the consent agenda, and then it gets placed at the bottom of our agenda for discussion. So we vote on the consent agenda as a whole and not each item individually. Does that make sense? All right. So I am looking for either a motion to approve the consent agenda or some other way of handling the consent agenda. Let me say it like that. Michelle.
I motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I second. It's
Was
Robin.
that Robin? Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Now we will do a roll call voting. Okay. So remember that you can vote as a yes, a no, or you can abstain, which is the equivalent of not voting. Cornelia.
Yes.
Counselor Jen.
Yes.
Ellen.
Yes.
Jenny.
Yes.
Patricia.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Devana.
Yes.
Pam.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Robin.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Robbie.
Yes.
Ruth.
Yes.
Tara.
Yes.
Russell. Russell, I didn't hear your vote, but you are unmuted.
All right,
Oh, there we go.
yes?
There we go. Thanks, Russell.
I don't know what's going on with the mic.
Trisha
Yes.
and Anna.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So our consent agenda passes unanimously. We are now on our information items. Okay, so I already mentioned this briefly in my president's report. AP 4105 will go out to department chairs. So that is coming. And then we will also, in parallel, have conversations at the Senate. I'm not sure whether steering will agendize this for our last meeting in January or our first one in February, but this will be agendized again so that we can take a closer look at this new AP that we have. Pam alluded to this in her very brief non-liaison update. There is a call for the chair of Faculty Partnership for Student Success Committee. Pam Gunther is our outgoing chair of that committee. And so now there is a faculty-wide call for the chair of this committee. Please know that the call has already happened within the committee, and no one that is on the committee currently has stepped up for this, which is why it is going faculty-wide. The outgoing chair did a really amazing and helpful thing, in my opinion, in that she has provided this to-do list for the new incoming chair, as well as has offered her expertise and her experience in getting the committee going. Technically, the committee has its first meeting scheduled for this Friday, so this is not a long turnaround for the new incoming chair to get get situated and ready to go. So if needed, this first meeting can be postponed, and this meeting can happen. I think, Pam, did you say Friday, February 5th to get?
So I actually already postponed it because people were asking. So I've moved it to January 29th.
Perfect.
because we have 5 Fridays in January, so it shouldn't interfere with any other meeting. And then hopefully we'll have a chair in place, and I will be able to help them hit the ground running by then.
Yes, and thank you again, Pam, that in my opinion, that goes above and beyond the call of duty of an outgoing chair. So we really appreciate your expertise and guidance there. I will share that there is a 1 TLU compensation for chairing this committee. So please reach out to your faculty constituents so that people are aware that we are looking for someone to chair this committee, and they can take a look at this to-do list that is attached to the agenda as, you know, a way forward. In addition to that call, I also have an open call. This will also be sent out faculty-wide via email for 2 faculty appointees to the Disciplinary Hearing Committee. This is a committee that meets as needed. It's my understanding that it hardly ever meets, although I'm hesitant to share that and make that promise moving forward, because whenever I feel like you make those promises, it always changes. However, again, historically, it hasn't met very often. And this is a committee that is made up of different constituency members. Students serve on it, staff serves on it, ALA serves on it, and serves as a committee to make decisions about student conduct and appeals for those decisions. So we are looking for 2 faculty members to serve on this committee that meets on an as needed basis. And I was thinking, just to kind of offer some perhaps guidance, I was thinking that perhaps it might be nice to have 1 faculty member from an area that sees perhaps a lot of, student academic honesty issues, perhaps. I was thinking like maybe, a heavy writing discipline that might see plagiarism, and then also a faculty appointee from student services side, like our counseling or any of the ESD departments. That was just kind of my idea, and to say, hey, to put a call out, but we can take any 2 faculty appointees for this. So again, please ask your faculty members in your divisions for that. Robin already mentioned my last information item, the call for nominations for the Stanback Stroud Diversity Award. So please touch base with everyone and let us know if you have a nominee for that. The information to get it to the committee is there. Trisha, I saw your hand raised. What's up?
Just confirming that for these committees that it has to be a full-time faculty at this point.
To a committee, it must be a full-time faculty member. Appointment for 2 faculty members on this committee, I believe, can be anyone. The AP where this committee is defined is attached to our agenda as a link. I didn't see where it said that it must be a full-time member. So it could be representatives from a variety of disciplines.
Thanks.
But check out the AP in case I'm wrong. Sound good?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Which brings us to discussion item 8.1. So this is an opportunity. We made this a discussion item, and that's why I asked both Pamela and Michelle to wait on their conversation for the COVID vaccine question for our discussion item. We Senate steering decided to have an entire discussion item basically about campus COVID updates so that you can ask questions of our EVP, who will provide a brief background information for us, and so that we can properly discuss this and not just have me rushing us along because it's a report and not a discussion item. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ralston so she can take this off, and now will be a great opportunity for you all to get your COVID questions in order. Before I turn it over though, can I just say that we have other discussion items to attend to today, and so we might have to curb the conversation should it go on too long. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but it's my feeling that we could probably spend meeting after meeting talking about COVID and updates there. So I just want to make sure that we're getting to our entire agenda today. So with that, Dr. Ralston, you want to take over?
Great, thank you very much. I would like to ask a protocol question first. I've got Luz Reyes Martin in the audience in our meeting today, and she is our liaison to county public health. So if a question comes up, is it possible for me to call on her from the floor?
So I would say that instead of considering her be on the floor, that she will be assisting you in your presentation. Does that make sense?
Yep, that works just great. So she has been knee deep in phone calls and a bunch of other stuff very recently. So she's got a ton of resources that she can help me with as we go forward. So what we talked about at steering and what was attached for you in the agenda that I'm hoping you had a chance to look through, because I'm not going to walk us through the document, is the COVID report that Cabinet provided for the President to the Board of Trustees in December. And it was an update report on all of the efforts of what we had done over the course of fall in order to get ready for, manage through, and get as close to successful as we could fall semester. And it included information about the physical work that's happening on campus as we prepare for more and more people eventually to be able to come back to campus. It also talked about the healthy roster resource that we've been using. So for those of you who have been teaching on campus, Russell, I know, has dealt with this. We're using a software system that allows people to check in and do a self-assessment on their COVID risk on a daily basis. You get these text messages. I think everybody gets the text messages, annoyingly, at 6:30 in the morning. So we've been using those protocols to be able to track, help, and manage people through. We have a COVID plan that's published on our website, and we're following through with that. I'm serving as the compliance officer for the student side of our COVID needs, and I just got notified that we've had some more exposures with students, and so I'm navigating through those. That's become par for the course. So you'll remember back in March, we had one student get sick right as we were getting ready to close campus, and everybody was like, oh my God, we can't believe we had one student sick. And since then, you can see that we've experienced these massive upticks in exposure and case rates across our county. And so we are kind of building this as we keep moving forward into it. So my earlier conversation when I first got to talk today talked about what we had hoped we were going to accomplish in spring, which was to pull some more broad-ranging general education courses back onto campus, and we weren't able to do that. We are hoping to teach about 20% of our summer schedule in person, maybe a little bit more if things get better quicker. And then we're planning on about 40% of our fall instruction on campus if things get better, stay better, and look kind of consistent as we go through with that. There are no good manuals for how to approach doing this kind of planning. And what we've really found ourselves being better at than we used to be is being a little more flexible and a little more responsive. And every time we can choose to strive for more consistency, it's actually us opting for a more conservative approach. So where we can, we've actually been choosing to hold back where we can to keep more people safe and to make things more comprehensible and more manageable. So that's what we did with spring semester. Dr. Goswami notified folks in December that it looked like it wasn't going very well and that we would hold everything online for the first 2 weeks. We got back to campus, did our reassessment, and determined there was no way that that was possible, that we were going to be able to have these indoor classes outside the exemption. So I'd like to actually pick up Michelle's question and then go forward with that. So you have been following in the news, I would assume, that vaccinations are now available. They're starting to move through the tiered process for dissemination. We are still currently in tier 1. We're in tier 1A, working through first responders and people in convalescent nursing centers, and then they're moving out from there. And as many times as I look through the chart and try to track myself and see where I fit, it's hard for me to keep in mind. There are 3 letters in tier 1, and then we move into tier 2, and then we start to move into more generalized population. This is the place where I might, as we go through the questions, I might refer back to Luz to help me in my presentation. But Michelle's question is, if we had a faculty member who got vaccinated and all the students in the class got vaccinated, would we be able to offer that class on campus? And so, Michelle, I'm going to need more on the question. Do you mean right now a class that we hadn't already determined would be okay? Or do you mean as we plan for our future going forward?
I mean, like right now, as the students are getting vaccinated, as soon as they would be completely vaccinated with both vaccines, and after they reach their peak efficacy, which is I think the week after that, if the entire class was vaccinated and all the instructors, would there be a possibility of us meeting on campus?
I can't answer that because I don't yet know the full extent of how vaccination will connect back to the guidance that we have from the state that's called Guidance for Institutions of Higher Education. So that got laid out even before the vaccines were distributed, and they did an update in August to realign with the new tiers that the governor's office established. My expectation is as vaccination becomes more widely accessible, they'll be doing an update on how to plan for and integrate case-by-case vaccination protocols. My understanding is that we won't get to generalized students being vaccinated until later in the spring. So we may, and I always think about Michelle in kind of a special category. Michelle's working with students who are likely, maybe more likely to be vaccinated in a different context because they're working in a hospital setting or a clinical setting. And so she may still be an exception. So I'm answering this the most generic way possible. And then Michelle will keep paying attention to allied health and nursing fields as they fit in special categories. I think the likelihood that
Cottage and Lompoc are offering vaccinations for the students, so that
Yeah.
a lot of our students already
Yeah.
have them because they work in healthcare. But this week, everybody who wants a vaccination is getting them.
and they're on vaccine 1, right? This week
Some
it's
of them are
vaccine 1.
done, but today would be
Oh, some of them
vaccine
did.
1 for the ones that are receiving it at Cottage.
Okay. That's going to be so special an exemption that I'm gonna touch base with our space. We have a county liaison that we're working with, but that feels super unusual. So for everybody else who's thinking, oh my God, Michelle thinks all our students are going to get vaccinated. No, not late, like March, April, May for the opening of the general population. So I'm going to have my colleague Luz Reyes Martin unmute herself and add in some detail or correct me if anything that I said was wrong.
No, that's good. Thanks. It's good to see you all. I guess I'll preface a little update by saying there is quite a lot of uncertainty about exactly how this is going to roll out and the timeline. And things are changing rapidly every day. Just in the last few days, things have changed with the original tiers and phases and categories. And even earlier today, the state put out new guidance moving everyone 65 and older up to this current tier. So a lot of that is changing. In addition, every county in California is handling this differently. There is some variation across counties with how they're doing this, the mechanism for doing it, and how quickly they're getting to the different populations. So just speaking for Santa Barbara County, we are working really closely with public health. They are certainly aware that we have an interest and willing population to be eligible, as soon as possible so that we can, serve students and be protected. And we will be taking their direction for when it's our turn. There's really no further information that I have about that at this time. I don't know, exactly what this will look like or where you'd have to go or anything like that. But we will continue to update the campus as we get more information. We'll do that as much as possible. I will say that if you happen to live in a different county, in Ventura County, for example, check their, public health webpage to see what kind of information they have. Our Santa Barbara County Public Health Department webpage on vaccines is updated regularly. That's the best place you can go for kind of the latest update. And if you have, a question or a specific question, you can always email me. I'm happy to try to, either give you an answer that I might know or try to help you get an answer. I know that everyone is really all hands on deck and really trying to get the vaccine out as quickly as possible to as many people as possible.
Pam.
So if you do live in a different county, would you be like, if we did a vaccination on campus that all faculty were going to, would I still be able to go to that vaccination, or do I have to wait till my county does it? Something like that.
That's a good question. My understanding as of now is that if you work in Santa Barbara County or live in Santa Barbara County, they will vaccinate you. So I don't expect that to change. But again, as we get closer to like it's actually happening, we'll confirm that. And just so the feeling from the administration is to really try to be as flexible and open as possible to have as many people that are part of our SBCC community to be eligible to be vaccinated. So we're really going to try to be as inclusive as possible with that process.
Bobby?
Do we have a way, or is anybody working on developing a way to monitor what fraction of our students are vaccinated?
That's a good question. That will probably, I don't have an answer for that for a couple reasons. Like Dr. Ralston mentioned, the general kind of 16 and up population is at the tail end of the current, phases. Mm-hmm. There's also not been any determination at this point about requiring, vaccine for any population. So I don't know yet, what that's going to look like or how we would track or know who has received the vaccine. So that is definitely a good question, but I don't have a response for that at this time.
And I ask because it's worth bearing in mind that it's likely that vaccinated people can still spread the virus. And so, having the instructor be vaccinated does not benefit the students. Because I could be vaccinated and that could prevent me from getting sick, but I could still infect my students. That's why I asked, just in case you know, and in case you're wondering. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things about that piece. I know it's one of the pieces of kind of FAQs that the public health department is working on to share with the public about, because that question has come up about whether you're still you can still spread the virus or not with the vaccine.
So the time in our meeting is now 3:53. If there's more questions on this, let's keep going. But if there's not a lot of burning questions, I would like to have this wrapped up by, let's say, 4 p.m. Any more questions? Trisha?
Yeah, I know with the non-credit in-service, one of the instructors asked if it was mandatory for faculty, and I'm sorry if it was, I got a little distracted by something. If it is mandatory for faculty to get vaccinated? No, okay.
No, there is no, at this time, no requirement for anyone to be vaccinated. Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out is that, folks might be eligible to receive the vaccine before maybe, it's more of the general SBCC population, either by age or by an underlying medical condition. So, just keep going to that county public health webpage if you're interested in that. Because like I said, a lot of this is changing regularly.
And before we totally sign off, Lou sent out a note to students last week and then forwarded to staff and faculty to remind people that we have a better opportunity for free testing in our community than we had previously. So 2 days a week, there is walk-up testing in Goleta, in Isla Vista. Yes. And so that's going really well, and it's an incredibly important addition to the community. UCSB is able to do its own testing, and they're managing something like 1,500 tests a day. So they're taking care of a good portion of that northern part of the community for us. And then this walk-in clinic helps respond to folks who are not UCSB students in that neighborhood, but it's open to everyone. So as you're working with students and you're thinking about yourselves, it's a pretty simple way to get up there and go ahead and get tested if need be.
Thank you. Yes, and I've heard anecdotally that it has been highly utilized by a lot of SBCC students, so that's great.
Good. This is just an ongoing set of questions and things that we're learning all the time, and we're just going to keep trying to push out information to you. So we're in the next piece of learning a lot more about vaccination, and so we'll be sharing anything that we particularly see this as great news. So we're going to be pushing out anything we learn about this as fast as we can. So kind of stay tuned, stay patient, and we'll get there.
Any remaining questions on this topic? If not, I'd like to correct 2 things. One, I am completely remiss. I started the meeting without introducing Michelle and sharing some good news from Christina, who is out on maternity leave. Christina did welcome to the world a very healthy, beautiful baby girl, which is why Christina is not with us today. So we'll all send our love to her. And Michelle is here with us. Michelle, do you want to unmute yourself and say hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone.
So she is here to help us with our meeting minutes for the next couple of meetings, and I really appreciate her support. And I shared with her earlier, and I'm sure you can all agree that she's probably the most important person in this meeting, because so much of our Senate work is looked at after years gone by when we say, wait, what did we do, when and how, and what was the discussion? So she's here with us today to do this work, and it's great to have her here. So thanks, Michelle. And I'm so sorry. I wrote myself a list, and of course I left it off and then didn't do it at the beginning. So I'm so sorry that I didn't do that before.
And let me thank Michelle and the communications department who made it possible for her to slide in and pick up a little work during the remote COVID period. So Michelle, thanks so much for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
That you're able to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great.
And the other thing I wanted to mention and correct is that with this new norm, I already forgot to do it. I did not ask for any public comment before item 8.1. So I'll do it now before 8.2. So we're going to move on to item 8.2, emerging need for a committee focus on distance education. Is there anyone from the campus community that would like to provide a public comment now on that item? If so, please raise your virtual hand in the participants field. Dr. Olguin, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
I just have a comment that the first item, the first attachment is not readable. You can't link to it. It's a bad link. So that's all that I wanted to say.
Yes, thank you for that. Our Pam Gunther alerted me to that, and I was going to address that during this item. It is true that that is a bad link. I don't know why the PDF did not upload appropriately. However, I was going to navigate to that PDF during this meeting, and I'll tell you all so that you can navigate to it easily yourself, that this is it is the Shared Governance Resource Guide. So if you Google that, if you search for that through the sbcc.edu website, you will find it. It's the document that explains all of the different committees in our shared governance process. So yes, that PDF is bad, a bad link, a bad file, and I will be sure to update it for posterity after the meeting. I just didn't have time to correct it during the meeting because I think it's going to take a little bit of internet wrangling and document control while I do it. So thank you, Art, for bringing that to everybody's attention before we begin in this discussion. But anybody wanting to look that up, it is available on the SBCC website, already posted. Okay. So let me provide you with some background before we start our discussion on this item. As you are all painfully aware, COVID-19 and other academic disruptions like the Thomas Fire and the debris flows that we've all experienced in the last few years have provided an ongoing need for a continuity of instruction plan, a robust distance education plan. And as we've talked about before, our AP for distance education needs to address several different items that we did not have time to address last semester. And so with that in mind, the fact that there is an AP that needs some updating and that we are all now experiencing what distance ed can be, should be, is in all of its presentations. I think we should have a Senate discussion about our current makeup of our committees, which is why I tried to post the resource governance document guide, as well as I posted our academic Senate bylaws that provides the charge of each of our different committees. I hope you had some time prior to the meeting to go through these and familiarize yourself, if you weren't already familiar with, our different committees, whether they be our quote campus-wide committees, and by that I mean a non-Senate committee, or our Senate subcommittees. What you may have noticed is that we do in fact have several different campus-wide committees and a Senate subcommittee dedicated to, let's say, technology needs. So we have the District Technology Committee, which is DTC. That is a campus-wide committee. We have ITC, which is a Senate subcommittee, Instructional Technology Committee. And then of course, we also have another campus-wide committee, which is Committee of Online Instruction, which reports to the Executive Vice President. And then we have all of these other committees that don't necessarily have technology or distance education in their name, but then of course touch upon technology needs, emerging technology needs, because technology is just such a big part of our working lives and our teaching lives. So with this, I'd like to turn the conversation over to you all. I know a lot of you are coming to this table with committee expertise. Some of you serve on some of these committees. Some of you have been liaisons to these committees, either currently or previously. And some of you have been on this campus for a long time and seen different committees evolve and emerge and change, take different charges, etc. So at this time, I would like to have this conversation, and I'd also like to share one more thing. It is part of our accreditation process, specifically Standard 4, that we do take a hard look at our committee structure to make sure that we are as efficient as possible, and to make sure that our committees are serving the needs that we need them to address. So with that in mind, I will now open the discussion up to you all as the Senate. Is there anyone that would like to kick this conversation off with any of their experiences, comments, or ideas on this? Okay, so now I'm going to say, wait, why aren't any of you talking? I think I think I screwed up the acronym, but nevertheless. Okay, there we go. Thank you. All right, so we got Pam, Michelle, and then Jenny. Pam, please start us off.
I think it might be worthwhile to, especially for people who maybe aren't familiar with the committees or haven't served on them, to have a discussion about, I know that we can look at the bylaws, but just sort of, those are the bylaws and what's actually happening at the committees may not necessarily match. So is it possible to have a little bit of a discussion about what COI, ITC, DTC are maybe currently working on or in the recent past have worked on?
Good idea. Thank you for that. Yes. So if I could just call on people to do this. So I will give you a brief rundown of what DTC does, the District Technology Committee. I'll ask, I'm going to put her on the spot, so I'll give her a couple of minutes to collect herself. I'm going to ask Michelle Gottwald, which is the Senate liaison to ITC, to talk about ITC. And Robin, you are our liaison to COI, is that correct? Okay, so then I'll call upon Robin to talk about COI. So DTC, the District Technology Committee. So first of all, I have not served on this committee very long, and the only capacity that I have ever served on this committee has been as the Academic Senate President in an ex officio position. So I do not have a long history with DTC, though there's people on the Senate, for instance, Kathy O'Connor, who have a much more intimate and much longer history with DTC than I, so she can add to anything that I'm sharing with you. I'll tell you what we've been working on recently so that you understand what the committee has been charged with recently. In general, DTC looks at the like hardware structural needs of the campus. And also one big item that we've talked about a lot during our fall meetings is this idea of, and this is a very problematic name, and we talk about this a lot, the Bring Your Own Device initiative, which isn't necessarily expecting or requesting our students to purchase their own computers, perhaps have it non-COVID time, like computer checkout, so that instead of having individual computer carts, let's say in classrooms, or individual computer lab upkeep, that students all have their own, something like Chromebook or whatever the campus wants to sponsor, and say, we all need you to have this, so that students are equipped with their own technology so that the campus isn't taking that on. So we've been working on that. And another thing that we've worked on in the fall was basically doing, I don't know, I think we used a different term, but I'll call it like an audit of our computer labs. And we turn that work over to ITC to help that. So the District Technology Committee, I think the name explains really well what it does. It's thinking about the technology needs on a district-wide, high-level basis. So Michelle, can you give us a quick rundown of ITC for us?
Yes. So I was going to just kind of read the description and then tell you what it is that we've been working on. So as far as the description is concerned, it says that we provide leadership and development and review of instructional technology for educational programs. And there is some providing oversight for the ranking of hardware and software that comes through, and kind of as an advisory for Faculty Resource Center, making recommendations for funding requests. But I think this is all, a lot of this is resources are given for instructors to better serve the students. And some of the things that the committee has been working on are trying to provide links so that students have access to resources that are available on campus. So that was something that came up recently, was Vandana wanted to have a link placed on Canvas that would allow students to access the various resources that are available at City College. And as far as the charge from DTC and the computer labs, evaluating, sorry about those kids, evaluating all of the labs, trying to figure out which computer labs we have on campus, what their function is, how best to utilize them. And that's what the committee has been working on. I think that just as a comment, and because I do sit on DTC as well, their functions, I don't feel they may be following their charge, but I think that there needs to be a committee that has a different focus, or maybe seeing whether we can add a different charge or focus to one of these committees in order to work on, in order to develop a committee that meets our current needs. Because we, I don't know, we're all using technology. It's nothing new. I think maybe some of these, at least ITC may have been, not that it's not relevant, I believe it's relevant, but in the past, when technology was not as common, we weren't using as many online resources. We, there was more face-to-face. So, my thought is that we need to find something that can meet the needs of today. And I don't know if it's ITC, I don't know if it's, adding it or combining committees or creating another committee, or, between COI and DTC. I'm not sure, but just babbling.
Cool. Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate it. You definitely don't have to. Wasn't trying to put you on the spot to come up with the answer. Just thanks for that. Really appreciate your insight into the committee. And so, Robin, can you please provide us a brief rundown of COI, Committee of Online Instruction? There we go.
Yeah. So this is the committee that deals with technology in terms of pedagogy in online instruction and issues revolving around it. The committee originally started as kind of an interest committee, so it's not a representational committee. It doesn't have, well, it is and it isn't, but in terms of faculty, it doesn't have divisional representation. And Kathy's here too. Kathy's been on that committee for a long time. Typically, faculty joined it who had a particular interest in online instruction. And so some divisions might have several members on the committee and some might have none. I believe also that attendance at committee meetings has depended on how strong a faculty member's interest was, or a participant's interest was at the moment. So if there was something of pressing concern, that person might be there, but then there are some members that are there for every meeting. So it's a little bit different how the committee is structured and how it works. There are deans on the committee, there is instructional support on the committee, and there are a lot of faculty on the committee. Discussions revolve around a lot of technology issues, including the pedagogy of online instruction, technology support and software for supporting online instruction. And the other issue that I think is of importance is that leadership on the committee is usually a co-chair, a dean, and a faculty member, but that leadership was not solidified last year very well. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. And now there is a new dean and new faculty co-chair that have taken those responsibilities this year. So Michelle mentioned direction issues. I think COI struggles from something similar at this point because now everybody's in online instruction. And so the issues become, much bigger for everybody and the questions become more important for everybody. Am I missing anything that would be good to include, Ray, or that you want me to address specifically?
Nope, that I just wanted everybody to understand the feel of each of these committees, just so that we can have a conversation. And let me share with you all, let me emphasize one thing. DTC and COI are campus-wide committees. ITC is ours. So meaning ITC is the Senate. It's a Senate subcommittee. It is defined in our bylaws. It gets, it's charged from the Senate. So that is really where we have the most, let's say, influence over the work, over the charge of the committee.
Rayanne, this is Kathy. There's no place for me to raise my hand on my little participation thing. Was that taken off?
So it's not, so Zoom has updated. It's in the reactions field now.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, sorry.
So-
Would it be okay for me to say one quick thing?
Sure, yep. And then we have some hands raised as well. So go ahead, Kathy.
Well, you go ahead and I'll raise my hand and do my stuff in order.
Okay, no worries. Did you find you found it? You see it now?
I did, yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't know about that. Okay.
No, it's totally okay. Okay, so with that, then I'll call on Ruth first, who's been waiting.
Okay, so following up with what Robin was saying about COI and asking 7F. So I don't know if this question is for Robin or maybe for Pamela in terms of COI and its role and its reporting to the EVP. What is that relationship like, and what does our EVP expect from COI? And that's one question. Then I have my comment that was rigid, I guess.
Pamela, you'll field that?
Sure.
Great.
So I think COI, we mentioned the fact that COI had a hard time getting a faculty member appointed, and we had 2 faculty step up last year to help us with some very important planning out of COI. So Kathy and Lori Vasquez helped do that work with Alan Price. What we need is a committee, and COI can be this. We just need to get some more attention and some more effort on it. We need a committee that does the work between faculty and administration, right? So in much the same way that any of our committees try to take down barriers so people can be more effective in their instruction, COI is that kind of a committee. So as we keep working toward the online education initiative, we don't have a committee that's gotten a chance to really own that work. Some colleges might have put that in a Senate committee like ITC. They might have put it in a shared resource committee like COI. We had some different things that were happening as we were rolling out the OEI. We're actually stronger now to do that work. And so we need to kind of come back and keep refreshing it. But the administration has access to understanding the resources and making things kind of possible. And then the faculty have the responsibility for the curricular piece and the academic quality piece. So we think about things like AP 4105, the distance education AP. We think about distance education evaluation. We think about the ways that we set expectations for one another and ourselves about how well we do this work online. We need a committee that can kind of tackle some of those bigger pieces. And I think sometimes when you've got some of those, especially the hold accountable pieces, sometimes that can be a little bit difficult if it's only faculty, right? It's nice to have some other people in there who can help be the backstop for some of that. So I'm interested in helping ground COI a little more fully. I know there's a conversation, and I think this might be the most important part of this. We maybe have too many committees. People's human resources to be able to serve across the institution and do our best work is stretched really thin at our institution. So when I think about 3 or maybe 4 committees that look like they're all about technology and instruction, I think, wow, we've got all these people trying to get to the same goal. How can we pool those resources and kind of amplify our work instead of stretching it out and trying to decide who owns what and fielding some of those challenges. So when I hear this conversation, I'm grateful for the work that ITC does. One, I have to tell you, that's the best attended meeting I go to. It is consistent. Folks get their homework done. They do a ton of work. DTC is a great way for us to be hearing about all the stuff that happens on campus and get buy-in to any of the cool things we want to have happen. And COI really is this piece that, you know, it reports to me. It's not, I haven't had a chance to help tend it as much as I've wanted. I really would like to have had that be where we went when we all got pulled online. We had to do all that blanket addendum work. So we built some things and you all helped do that beautifully to get all that work done. But it would have been nice if we had had something called the Distance Ed Committee. We just turned to them and they're like, here's how you fix it. We're going online. And that committee did all the heavy lifting, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking about is how can we use this, the very limited human resources we have to best effect? How can we help that be a place where more people know what's happening so they can get involved and they can learn from it? So that's kind of where my focus is in this conversation. So I'm not sure if that answered the question about COI and its response and reporting to the EVP or not. I could imagine a district committee, not one that, you know, it could be a subcommittee to CPC at this point. This is such important work that we do that it is a virtual campus. If we start to see distance ed as serving that kind of role for us, we see how big it is when we think about it in those terms.
Okay, so thanks for that. So I think this is an incredibly important conversation for us to be having right now. I definitely would need to restructure this, and I think the way forward would be one of two ways, is that we either stick with COI and get our faculty there actively involved. So as Pamela said, we ground them and we give them specific things that they need to be working on, and it sounds like we'd be skipping a step if we don't, in addition, have our own Senate committee that would then have to communicate with COI. Or that's the other option. The other option is we have our own Senate committee. It's only faculty. We're addressing the issues we need to address. And then we have that extra step, which is fine. And it might be more efficient in that sense because we're faculty student focused and we're only thinking about the curricular and the online platform stuff. So I think those are the two options for us to consider. I do think that ITC, that it's not as necessary. It looks like some of this work is redundant. Not that the work is not important, but it seems to be a bit redundant. And I also think that that could be enveloped under whatever structure we end up with. DTC, we clearly need that. And I wanted to point out that, and I think I've said this before, I mentioned this somewhere, is that after all the dust settles, there's going to be a structural shift in both the distribution of colleges, the type of colleges that survive this, not just because it's COVID, but because of the enrollment issues that have been happening across the board anyway, the colleges and universities, and also the modality, right, what they end up delivering. So the competition is going to be stiff. So we need to make sure we're ready for that different, essentially a different market structure. And yeah, so that was it.
Thank you, Ruth. Kathy?
Thank you. Just a quick little review. I think that we could use COI in a very different way. COI has done some of these tasks in the past. We've dealt with the OEI. We've looked at plans. We've looked at policies. So I think certainly COI could be repurposed. I do agree that having any more committees, it just becomes harder and harder to get people to participate and be active. Also, you sort of left out the curriculum piece of distance ed, which we've been doing at curriculum, which has very, specific rules and regulations. So that's a piece that could be brought, in as information, particularly to another committee. ITC, I mean, Lori has done an amazing job over these years. We do a lot. She gives us a lot of information about what is going on statewide. We link a lot of our activities to DTC, particularly things that are campus-wide initiatives. So I think the relationship between those committees has worked very well, and ITC does a lot of really good work and does get a lot of information out. I mean, we're hoping that the faculty share that information with your divisions because Lori always gives us a plethora of information at each of our meetings. But I think to start with, to make things happen quickly, we could certainly repurpose COI and give COI specific tasks that you think would be valuable, and then maybe we could even rank those to see which we think is the most important and move forward with an existing committee.
My only comment about that is, again, COI isn't ours. So I just want to be careful not to overstep. I want Senate to stay in our lane so that others stay in their lane, right? And we can work collaboratively.
Well,
Want to make sure that
Some of these issues, though, overlap, like the whole membership in OEI is not just a faculty issue. So that's why I think the committee has worked well in the past on a lot of these issues, is because some of these things, you can't stay in your own lane because then you make mistakes and you're not communicating. So I think for that reason, it depends on what your purpose is. If it's going to deal with the larger issues that Pamela brought up, then it really needs to be a combined group so that we're all on the same page.
I just, what I meant by stay in our own lane is I or the Senate cannot cannot delegate to COI. And I think that would be inappropriate to do so. I think we can provide recommendations to the EVP who the committee reports to and have it be a conversation, but I don't think it's appropriate for the Senate to delegate to that group. Robin.
Yeah, I just want to touch back on something that Ruth mentioned about, and has also been brought up by Kathy and is in the whole conversation with the Senate's role and faculty role in some of these decisions. The thing that I think COI, some of the issues that COI might struggle with or the Senate might struggle with are the fact that it's not representational, and so some divisions might have no input on some of these very important issues that are coming up, and some divisions might have a lot of input on these issues. And because the committee doesn't report to Senate, there are a lot of 10+1 topics that come up in COI because it is about instruction and pedagogy. But again, the Senate has the question mark of what's our role if it's a 10+1 issue, and those matters are being discussed there. So I think just the waters are a little muddy, and figuring out a way to clear those up so that faculty does clearly have input on what is faculty purview and the Senate purview, and how the Senate gives feedback and input to the faculty part of COI is a little tricky with our structure right now.
So I have a couple of hands that I definitely want to get to. Ellen, Ruth has her hand up, and Pamela also wants to contribute with her by her hand being raised. I do want to say this, the time is 4:26 and we have a couple more agenda items. This is not a problem that needs to be solved today. And one thing I want to do to kind of shape our conversation in a way forward is say, as a Senate, do we want this item to come back to the Senate for another general discussion? Do we want to create an ad hoc group so that those interested parties can bang this out? Perhaps we invite the chairs of the different technology committees and also CAC, as Kathy mentioned, to come together and figure this out. How do we get this work done so that we can figure this out? So is that a general Senate discussion, or do we have a small interest group? So Ellen, Ruth, and then Pamela, and then we'll try to move on after that.
Okay. So I've been on COI. This is my 11th year on COI. So when I started, it was a Senate committee and then became a campus-wide committee. I also was on ITC for several years. And I think though both committees have dealt with pedagogy to some degree or in different ways, I think the way COI has dealt with pedagogy is something that's both important and should be under the purview of Senate. So I think it's really important that we have some committee, whether it's COI or some combination of COI and ITC or something else, that is under Senate purview, that does deal specifically with pedagogy. And I also think Robin's point about divisional representation is really, really important. The entire time I've been on COI, except for those early 2 or 3 years, however long it was before it became a campus-wide committee,
It's just, as Robin said, it's just whoever wants to show up. It's that's really fluid too. It changes a lot even within a semester. And I think that was fine when there were a limited number of faculty teaching online and a limited number of disciplines that had online courses. But now that we're all online and that it will probably change the landscape for the future, I do think it's really important that we have someone from each division there to represent the disciplines in their division when it comes to the pedagogy.
Thank you, Ellen. Ruth, Pamela, and then Patricia Stark has raised her hand. So Ruth.
So your comment about the inappropriateness of Senate delegating to COI, when you said that, that absolutely made it clear to me that we need to have our own standalone, because we need to be able to task this committee for 10+1 issues, right? So we definitely need some sort of Senate committee that we put together. If we incorporate ITC into it or not, that's a different issue, but I know that potentially we could be considering things that aren't distance ed oriented that have to do with technology and 10+1, so we have to consider where that would fall. But I do feel like that ITC, the way that it is now, or any committee, not just ITC, that we shouldn't have a committee of receiving reports, right? We should always have a deliverable, right? So, I definitely want to visit or consider what we're going to be doing with ITC. And then I'm in support of divisional representation for sure.
So we've said this a couple of times that they don't have divisional representation, and according to our governance docs, they're supposed to. So I just wanted to highlight that. So it's not that they don't, it's just that in practice they don't. So Pamela, Patricia, and then Trisha. And then I'd like to wrap this up and figure out a way forward.
Great. I'm just going to check with Patricia. Are you going to talk about the Standard 4A improvement plan and looking at committees? Patricia Stark, in your comments, you're muted.
Yes, Ray already brought that up at the beginning of the discussion, and I think that this is part of what we said we needed to do, is to take
I'm going to
a look.
yield. Hang
Okay.
on, I'm going to yield my conversation so that Patricia can wrap that into hers.
Okay. And I think Pam's next.
No, you are Patricia.
Oh, okay. So yeah, just big picture, and Ray already touched on this. When we wrote our college-wide improvement plan, which we also have signed off on now, for Standard 4, which is governance and decision-making, we really elevated the need to take a look at our committee structure and look for those areas of redundancy or things that just aren't working anymore because of changing conditions. And this discussion we're having today goes straight to the heart of that. You guys have said it, it doesn't need to be restated. Online education now belongs to all of us, and we need to address that. So I just wanted to say two things and maybe leave an idea out there, Ray, for people to think about when we come back to this. I personally really think that having a Senate committee that reports to a larger college-wide committee can be an effective model. I've seen ITC and DTC work together very effectively, and I'm wondering if maybe we should try to keep what's working and just improve on it. So we have the college-wide COI, we have the college-wide DTC. And I think that the argument Pamela made about COI needing a lot of college-wide representation is actually true. Where I keep looking is the Senate part of this. And I just want to say a little tiny bit of history. We now have a committee that's called the Committee on Faculty Resources. 3 years ago, that committee was called the Committee on Teaching and Learning. And we changed the nature of it, we in the Senate, because we felt like a Committee on Teaching and Learning really didn't have a work product to deliver to the Senate. So what we've got before us now, and I'm looking at all of our Senate committee structures, you've got ITC, the nature of which has changed, and this is no criticism of that committee, it's just times have changed. And we've got a Committee on Faculty Resources, which I think if I squint, I can say that faculty resources have a lot to do with distance ed. So I just want to put out there as a thought, the possibility of taking those two committees and finding a way to combine them into a faculty-driven committee or Senate committee on distance education and technology, something along those lines. So we would keep COI to bring all of those college people in, because we need them. We don't know how the college connects to the state and all of that stuff, but we have very specific issues at the Senate that we could work out in our committees. But I think we could actually look at folding two committees together. And believe me, is no way dismissing the work that those individual committees are doing, but times have changed and we need to change with them. So could y'all think about that, and maybe we could talk about that at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Patricia. Yeah, either at the next meeting or, like I said, perhaps we want to do an ad hoc. So Trisha and then Pam Gunther, and then I really would like to cut us off after that, because I feel as though the next agenda item is going to take a time and things like that. So Trisha.
Okay, so just real quick, I just want to say that it says 11 faculty, 1 from each division, but I think that this would be a committee that non-credit would also benefit from, since we are also moving towards incorporating more distance ed and long line classes, I believe.
So that would be, so again, COI reports to Dr. Ralston. So that acknowledge, thank you for sharing that. It's always good to have you speak up for your School of Extended Learning. And then, yeah, Pamela, did you catch that one?
Yeah, I
Okay.
did.
Cool. Thanks, Pamela.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Trisha. Pam, and then we'll wrap this up.
So I'm gonna be very quick. A lot of what Patricia said was actually what I was thinking, is combining those two committees. And then the part of the resource committee that is supposed to provide recommendations to PDAC. I think that's something that could just be taken care of at PDAC, the professional development recommendations, as long as we make sure we have faculty representation there. I just want to reiterate that, and then just say that part about professional development recommendations could be just pulled off and put into PDAC.
I think these are really good suggestions. Obviously, we're not going to take any action on them today. Do we want an ad hoc committee to kind of be formed to take a look at this and then come back to the Senate with suggestions, or do we want this agendized at a future Senate meeting? Pam, you gave a thumbs up for the first suggestion, right? So if you could all give me a virtual thumbs up just to do a straw poll. Do you think forming an ad hoc committee is a good idea to take a look at this and pull in different? Okay. All right, cool. I'm getting the idea that that's a good idea. 7, yeah. So you guys are thinking it's a good idea. Some of you are shaking your heads, yes. So I appreciate that. Okay, so that's what we'll do. I'll put a call out to senators, please, senators, I'll put a call out to you. Obviously, that the Senate has control over our bylaws, so we can start there. I'll reach out to you all to see if you want to be on the ad hoc committee. I'll also ask that in your own divisional work, when you send out your email, you let your faculty constituents know, and then I'm going to reach out to perhaps the committees that are affected by this, so that any of those committee members, the chairs, they can be all pulled into this conversation as well, so that we have a really robust group of people working on figuring this all out. And then that committee will then bring back recommendations to the Senate. I think that's a great way forward. Sound good? Awesome. Okay, so I don't want to forget our new norms. We will now move on to Senate Agenda Item 8.3, Academic Senate and NTCC Budget Planning. So at this time, I'll call for a public, no, that's not right. At this time, I'll call for a SBCC campus community comment. Is there anyone that would like that's not a senator, that's not officially here, that would like to provide comment about this agenda item before we begin our discussion? Okay. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So I will move forward with introducing this item for the Senate discussion. Last semester, we took a hard look at the structural deficit for which we are faced as a campus community. We saw several presentations by James Zavas. Lindsay came during our last meeting, as well as James, to give us an update on where the budget deficit is where we're at. Dr. Goswami has also provided a two-year plan to address the budget deficit. One of the items included reducing or adjusting is the phrase he used, but reducing NTCC stipends, non-teaching compensation committee stipends by $125,000. NTCC is a committee that reports to our EVP. And the makeup of the committee is the Academic Senate President serves as the chair. There is one Academic Senate appointee. Currently, that person is Kathy O'Connor. The FA President, Cornelia Alzheimer, serves on the committee, as well as an FA appointee. Currently, that is Peter Georgakis. So there are 4 faculty members on this committee, in addition to 4 deans. Right now, the 4 dean appointments are Jens Kuhn, Corolla Smith, Elizabeth Imhoff, and Alan. Why am I blanking on Alan's last name? Somebody help me. Alan Price. Oh my goodness. Sorry. That was just my nerves. So those are your 4 dean appointments as well. Being that the work of this committee affects many faculty members, as well as the fact that your Academic Senate President serves as the chair of this committee, and we have been discussing and thinking about ways that faculty can be part of the budget deficit situation that we find ourselves in. Senate Steering has decided to bring the work of this committee and a discussion around this committee for informational purposes so that our faculty body can better understand what happens at this committee to this agenda today. So attached to the agenda, this agenda item, rather, let me say it like that, are, again, the Academic Senate bylaws, but specifically, that was hard to say, pages 16 and 17, where this committee and its charge is defined. I attached the NTCC handbook that the committee uses to shape their work. However, you have probably already noticed that it is very much out of date. And the third item that I attached for you is the current fiscal year NTCC leadership stipend summary so that you all understood what Dr. Goswami meant when he said $125,000 adjustment to the leadership stipends. Specifically, or he said adjustment to these compensations, and specifically we're looking at, quote, leadership stipends. That does not include department chairs, and that does not include coaches, but that's a little bit more of a complicated conversation that I'll answer a little bit more thoroughly in a moment. I wanted to bring to you the summary document so that you could see where our stipends are generally being assigned in the different areas of our quote, non-teaching, but obviously they relate to our teaching quite a lot. The total amount of leadership stipends assigned by this committee is $943,658.31. However, in this fiscal year, last paid, we are only paying out $907,124.18. So how do we come up with that number this year? If you total all of the different amounts given in the last column, it will come to that $907,000 amount. So I gave generic non-teaching titles to large categories so that we can just talk about this in general, so that we're not talking about specific stipends or specific departments or specific people receiving these. In the second column, I designated how many stipends of each type is provided. And then in the first column, I'm the one that came up with these generic non-teaching titles. Each of the individual stipends have all their own unique titles. So I just tried to generally group them as class coordinating or center coordinating or computer lab coordinating and so on. The reason why I'm bringing this to the Senate is because it's my opinion and the opinion of several other committee members on NTCC that the work of the committee, as well as the stipends themselves, are not well understood by the faculty body. So I wanted to bring this forward as kind of an informational piece so that we all see where this money is coming from and going, as well as what do we think about Dr. Goswami's suggestion. Remember that his 2-year plan was faculty requested, and it was just a suggestion of how we were going to handle and approach and deal with our structural deficit. So there's probably other important things that I left out there. I was just trying to give you this really brief introduction to this this really important committee, this big money ticket item that we have as a faculty body. And so I'm just at this point going to turn it over to you. Perhaps some of you can ask me questions to clarify anything that I left out, and we can start our discussion here. Ruth.
Question.
Yes.
Class course, what are they called? Coordinators, class coordinators. What does that entail?
So of course we would have to take a closer look at each of the individual stipend, let's say, application for when they were established. So I'm going to answer your question generally. Is that okay? So a class coordinator in different disciplines are going to be different. But for a class coordinator, as well as I'll lump in lab coordination as well, when there are multiple sections of the same class provided by different instructors, the person receiving the stipend for the coordination tries to provide continuity over the sections. And so from my vantage point, let's say they provide some kind of administrative support to all of the different instructors teaching those sections. So for instance, a lab coordinator for Bio 100 would coordinate with all of the different instructors for that section, make sure that they're all doing, the class schedules are all the same so that there is continuity of the lab schedule so that the lab techs can set up each week as one lab for all of the different students taking it. Textbook coordination, grading key coordination, communication amongst the instructors so that they're all on the same general page while they're teaching, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does that help?
Yes, but I thought that was our job. Okay. So that's my comment on that. And the other thing is, I think each of these should have a job or role description, and I don't think that they all do, right? So that we can, if they're going to continue into perpetuity, that we can always go back and refer to it and see if it's changed, if this still needs to be funded, if it needs to be, modified. And then my last comment for now is that if we don't make this decision will be made for us.
Yes.
So in other words, administration will take it and decide.
Yes. So Ruth, I do want to say, so two things. I don't disagree with you that the coordination across sections is part of our job. I'd also like to, or at least like that's questionable, right? Like those activities literally are non-teaching. right? Because, but it's like, it supports your teaching. So I could see an argument either way, I guess. I'll also share that from an equity standpoint, especially with class coordination, as I have experienced it, speaking from a personal standpoint, we would have to go in and ask literally every single person doing this work, and also the people that like are beholden to that work. So, you know, the way I think about it within my own department, I'll keep it personal so that I'm only speaking for myself. There's a teeny bit of equity amongst instructional faculty. There's like an equity component here, right? So if you're the full timer and you're declaring what all of the sections are going to do, and you're choosing the textbook, and you're declaring the, you know, grading key, and you're setting the schedule, is there an opportunity for discussion of academic freedom in the different sections? And, you know, if you have a part-timer that is, you know, teaching one of these sections that the full-timer is coordinating, and they disagree with something, do they have an opportunity to speak up? They might, but they also might not, right? So I do think that we can think about this as that's at least one part of this conversation, I think. Counselor Jen.
Sorry. So you had mentioned that the suggested was $125,000 adjustment.
Yes.
Is the question, I guess I'm a little confused on the percentage. I mean, are they just wanting to slash 125,000 out of everything? But is it up to us, or are we giving feedback on maybe the percentage from each area? I mean, I feel like.
Yeah. So let me help with that. So
Okay,
it
thanks.
is the work of the committee, and the committee is doing this work currently. So the committee is doing this work in two separate steps. One, a lot of these stipends, no, that's not accurate. Some of these stipends are for when we're on campus. And the fact is we are off campus right now due to COVID. In the fall, all of the stipends were provided. And so now the question is, well, actually, is the work ongoing because of COVID social distancing? And for some, the answer is no, right? And COVID has changed that. And so the committee is tasked with looking at these stipends, and basically, and we sent out emails to everybody receiving these stipends and said, hey, has your work changed because of COVID? And people got back to us and said, no, it hasn't. Or yes, it has, and et cetera. So we're going through that and making a recommendation to the EVP for the spring so that some of these stipends can be pulled back. So for a temporary initial savings of X amount of dollars. However, we are also tasked with finding the $125,000. And so again, that is the work of the committee. So all of this semester, the committee will be working with the faculty and the departments receiving these stipends and trying to find that money. A concern that some have expressed is that they don't really understand NTCC, that it doesn't have divisional representation, that it doesn't have a lot of representation. And so because of those questions, and because it has kind of been a committee that is not well understood and hasn't been shared widely, steering thought it was a good idea to bring this to a Senate agenda. So as it's here on the agenda, we are not asking the Senate to find the $125,000 savings, but rather understand that Dr. Goswami made this suggestion, and this is one area that we could perhaps either support or not support in finding savings, so that we're all in this together. So that, like Ruth said, the decision isn't made for us, but rather we have a part of this process. The other thing I want to share with all of you is that these, we are looking at a structural deficit of, it changes here and there, but the number that we constantly go back to is 3.5 million. That is a structural deficit, meaning ongoing. So if we don't address it, things aren't good. I don't know how more intelligently to say that. One thing I want to point out is that these stipends are, there's only about 60 so-called leadership stipends, so non-department chair, non-coaching stipends, and they are received by the few. So as we're thinking about, I mentioned equity before, coming up with these conversations, coming up with these questions, having it be at the Senate. Are these equitable? Is this an area that we want to keep? Is this an area that Senate wants to support? And make sure that we say to administration, no, we shouldn't be looking at these, or do we want to say, yes, this is an area that we want to look at. This seems like low-hanging fruit, and in a place where we can contribute to the budget discussions, so on and so forth. I also want us to think about, and I'll help shape this conversation a little bit further. I also want us to think about what I started this conversation with, which is the Academic Senate President is the chair of this committee. This committee is fully in compensation considerations, and it has nothing to do with 10+1. Or at least in my opinion, has nothing to do with 10+1. So the other thing I want us to consider as a Senate body is, do we want the work of the Senate to be in this area of compensation? Is this truly in 10+1? And everything along that line of thinking. So that is why it has been agendized for a discussion today. So Counselor Jen, did that answer your question?
It does. It does. It helps. I mean, I still have some things going around swirling, but I think it will come together.
Yeah, and can I just maybe put words in your mouth and say potentially it's swirling because this is like your first experience with this committee? And
yes.
And that you had no idea what this committee was or did or any of these stipends?
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, so I'm putting words in your mouth, but that is exactly why it was agendized today, right? And I'm not exaggerating when I say that I spent a majority of my working life towards the tail end of last semester and break, and will spend a majority of my working life this spring as your Academic Senate President, thinking about faculty compensation and working with the committee in this way. And so the question for the Senate is this our purview? So we only have 5 minutes left in the meeting. I kind of hope that somebody entertains a motion to extend the meeting so that we can get through this really important conversation now that we started it. But I do want to get to the hands raised as well. So Ellen?
How about I make that motion to extend the meeting to start with?
Coolness, and I will make sure that your question gets answered as well. Is there a
I'll
second?
second. This is Robbie.
Okay, thanks, Ellen and Robbie. I really appreciate that. With that, we'll do a quick roll call vote. Oh, is there any discussion on the motion to extend the meeting? Please unmute yourself, senators, and say.
Do we want to say a certain time period, 30 minutes? Or 15?
We usually do 15. I think that's the norm, but I'm wondering, I'm not the motion maker, but I'm wondering if the motion makers will entertain.
How about 30 minutes?
30 minutes. So the motion on the table from Ellen Carey is to extend the meeting by 30 minutes. Robbie?
I'll still second that.
I'll still second that. Great. So really quick roll call for extending the meeting until 5:30 p.m. Cornelia?
No.
Jen, Counselor Jen?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Patricia?
No.
Got 2 no's. Michelle?
Yes.
Devonna?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Kathy?
No.
That's 3 no's. Robin?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Russell?
No.
It's 4 no's. Trisha,
No.
5 no's, and Anna.
Yes.
Okay. 5 no's. Patricia, is that 2/3?
Well, can you flip that? We need 11 yeses.
So that was more than 11 yeses. There's 18 minus 5, so that was 13 yeses.
Okay.
So the meeting will be extended by 30 minutes. If anybody needs to leave, feel free to do so. We will just need a quorum to, wait, do we need a quorum to continue? We're not taking action on anything. Maybe Patricia can think about that.
Yes, we need a quorum.
We
And
need-
quorum, in order to continue the meeting, we need a quorum, and that would be 9 senators.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Patricia, for that. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Ellen so that we can address your comment or question.
Sure, mostly comments. I think the question about equity that you mentioned is really important, as is the question about academic freedom. And as someone who is a course coordinator, that's something that I think about a lot. To address Ruth's question, I wanted to give a very specific example of what work falls into that course coordinator stipend for me. We have, for Library 101, we have subscription tutorials and videos that are updated by the vendor at least twice a year, some phased out, some new ones. We personalize those for Library 101, and only I can access that. That's not something that our adjuncts don't have access to. So in order to maintain the content that they use as sort of an online textbook, it requires someone doing that work. So that's just an example. Having gone through the process of getting that stipend, I will say that it was completely incomprehensible to me, the criteria for what it was based on, for how much I ended up getting. It was all very, very confusing, and I think that's a problem. I think it needs to be much more transparent and understandable by people who are not on the committee. And then I also lastly wanted to say that I do have concerns about this being something that Senate is addressing at all. I think, or even a committee like this is addressing. I think as a compensation issue, it should be something that's negotiated by our union. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Ellen. I really appreciate that. Robbie, you are next.
I agree. It's not our purview. It's not in the 10+1. It's compensation. And another reason why I think we should not be addressing this is that if we go to our constituents, they're all going to say, yeah, but I need my stipend. It seems like a majority of them are not going to be willing to give it up. And I think that is really sad, because if we don't give up these stipends, that's another coworker that we're likely to lose. And I think the coworkers are more important than the stipends. So I'm happy to just not do anything about it and let the administration cut whatever they're gonna cut.
Patricia.
Yes, I want to give a tiny little bit of history, and then I'm going to have a solid idea. And that is this NTCC committee, and I was not a front row seat to the creation of this. This was done a really long time ago. But this was a vestige of our so-called thin contract. In other words, we have a whole lot more under Senate purview at Santa Barbara City College than most colleges in the state have. Most colleges have so many things that are in our APs under their collective bargaining agreement. So back in the day when this committee was created, and it had a different name, it was called the Committee on Non-Teaching Compensation. This was the college's attempt to inform compensation issues with academic information about what these jobs actually incurred. So you can see it was at the time a good faith effort to not just give it away to the union, because the Senate wanted some say about the integrity of these positions. So that was then. And I chaired this committee for 2 years, and I'm certainly not going to argue with the complexity and the confusion of what has evolved over time. So, so here's the deal. We're probably the only college in the state that has something like this. There is absolutely no question that we're talking about compensation, which is not a Senate purview. But on the other hand, this goes straight to the heart of the kind of work that we as faculty are doing. That's legitimate work, and that's not teaching. It is indeed non-teaching compensation. So I hate to say this, folks, but I think this might be bigger than we are. We're going to be scheduling a Tech Assist later this semester with the State Academic and the Community College League of California. And I think this is one of the problems, one of the challenges we might want to ask for their input on. Because there's really only a couple of options. We only have a couple of options. So we can keep doing what we're doing, and we can lean on Ray to make some incredibly unpopular recommendations about who doesn't get their stipends. I don't think that's going to work very well, even with the cover of the committee. We could pull the Senate out of this entirely and completely burden our FA, which already has plenty on its plate. Or we could look for some kind of middle ground or transitional plan to get us where I think we all know where this eventually needs to be, which is under the realm of compensation. So I would like us to think about getting some outside advice on this, bring in some experts to take a look at what we have and how we might work our way through this. Ray, I have a really quick question too. And that is, when you guys went in and did your updates, were y'all able to save any money? In other words, just those positions that don't exist anymore, those that have just become defunct. Were y'all able to come up with a dollar figure that could take a little pressure off of us? You're smiling.
I'm smiling because I am very frustrated by the dollar amount. It was
It's a very small.
It was $16,000.
So that's not going to do it for us. Oh boy.
No.
I think,
no.
I think
and that and let me share. So it was $16,000. There might be a little bit more. Let's round up and say after Friday's meeting, we may have found $20,000 for temporary savings because of COVID. And I will add that several of those stipends were pulled back only because the faculty member said, yeah, the work really isn't there, but it will be there when we come back to campus. So the $20,000 that we have found thus far is very temporary, as in spring savings. And beyond that, we're faced with departments and faculty that are receiving stipends that are saying, not only am I still doing this work, but my work has increased. So, you know, and if you look, and I shared, I want to point this out. So a couple of things attached to this agenda, like I said, is the NTCC handbook, which is so old, it doesn't even reference APs and BPs. It references, I don't even know what you call these, like policies, I guess. This was like, this, you know, predates me and as a faculty member on this campus. There is no place in this document, in this handbook for the work of this committee to pull back any of these stipends. It says in here, you know, if right here, I think is the most important part, that NTCC can only ever look at newly assigned leaderships and or non-teaching responsibilities, or when we can look at them where the person receiving it shows that their responsibility has substantially changed. So this isn't my work. This is the, you know, this is like historically in this document. What I want to share is like, if you're receiving one of these stipends and let's say your work goes away, which is almost never the case, but let's just say it does. Why, you know, like what incentive do you have to ever say, other than like, you know, your own like conscience, like that the work went away? Like, no, don't pay this out anymore, right? So it's, you know, I think if nothing else, we just want to take a look at the committee, the working docs, things like that. But I also want some direction because you know, somebody said that the work is going to be on me to do something unpopular, which is to pull back stipends. And I just want to say that, yes, I'm the chair of the committee, but it is going to be the work of the committee. But yes, this is going to be unpopular, but regardless of whether we're pulling back money or giving it out, no matter which way the money goes, this is not Senate purview. And I just don't understand, or rather, yeah, I guess I have to say that personally. I don't understand why this is the work of the Senate. As somebody who's trying to unmuddy the waters as the Senate president, you know, I keep trying to narrowly define people's roles and keep the Senate in, you know, I use the language of keeping us in our lane earlier. You know, I want to keep us in our lane, and this doesn't seem like our lane. And I don't want to make that decision unilaterally. I want the faculty body to say whether this is the Senate's lane or not. And that's why it was agendized. So with that, Pam, Ruth, and Kathy.
I know some people are going to be sick of me saying this because I say it over and over again. This is not Senate purview, it's compensation. I feel very strongly about that. The only part of this that to me even remotely comes close to Senate purview is potentially making recommendations about these types of positions. So, you know, maybe it's Senate purview to say, yes, there should be a director of composition. You know, maybe that's the Senate part of it, arguing for the need for some of these positions, but the compensation part to me is absolutely not Senate purview. That is a union administration issue. And I just really want to say that the only piece that feels like Senate is arguing for whether or not the position itself is necessary.
Thank you for that, Pam. Ruth, and then Kathy.
Agreed with Pam, but I think either way the cuts need to be made, right? So we need to, the decision to send it to the FA is separate from the decision to cut. Either way, that cut needs to be made. And my understanding is, Ray, no matter what, we need to make it, right? Or we can just ask admin to do it. Is that correct? Or they ask us, they say, you don't make a decision, we're taking it.
So this is a hard question to answer. So yeah, I mean, I think if I have to choose my words carefully so I don't get myself in trouble. If the committee does not do this work, it is my understanding that the administration would do it, yes.
Okay.
I was given the deadline, or I was given and I just received this recently, I was given the window until March to figure this out. What worries me about this work and finding the $125,000, let's say it like that, is that because of the committee makeup being only for faculty members and 4 deans, there is a lot of work to do this correct and to do it fairly and to do it right and to take, you know, every single stipend and take a look at it and ask every single person and department to justify it and then bring it back and then review that and then have conversations. It is very slow work. To expedite it would mean not getting input where it's needed in a conversation where it's needed, right? And I don't know, I'm just being honest. I am very worried about getting this work done by March. I'm very worried about that. So I mean, like Robbie already said it, as a faculty body, we could throw our hands up and say, well, you want to cut $125,000, go ahead. I don't think we want to do that because we have requested, demanded, we continuously say that we want to be part of shared governance. So if we want to be part of shared governance, this is one area where we can work together. That being said, I really don't think that this 4 faculty, 4 dean committee can do this heavy lift and do it the way it needs to be done. So one suggestion I might have is to form an ad hoc committee to address it. The ad hoc committee, I would recommend not have any voting members of the current NTCC committee and not have any voting members that receive a stipend. So that, you know, that the people on the committee making the decisions for the cuts aren't personally affected by the cuts.
Yeah.
But I'm at the will of the Senate. This was agendized by Senate steering so that we could come up with something here, whether, you know, a way forward.
Okay, so I think, just to wrap up my comment here, I think this is an opportunity for us to give input on, we have a limited amount of resources here and on its highest value use, right? We have to make tough decisions. So I like this idea of the ad hoc committee, and then am I in favor of eventually sending it off to the FA? Yes, but definitely not before cutting out the fat, cutting out the stuff that the things that we don't need anymore. If there's a stipend out there that's being paid for some antiquated process, program, service, whatever it is, then that should be something that's good.
Unfortunately, it's hard to have people admit that there's an antiquated program or process or work. And you as an economist, I'm sure, can appreciate that.
Yeah, but I'm like, give me the scissors.
I would love to hand you the spreadsheet in a red pen, Ruth. That would make my life so much easier. And then when anybody complains, we can call Ruth Morales. Okay, with that, Kathy is the next person in line, correct?
So just for a little history, this committee was established all those years ago because stipends were just given out by the EVP. And so it turned out that whoever was either the last person in his office or his favorite person got stipends. The department chair stipend issue was a mess. And so the Senate and the Faculty Association, which was the IA at that time, got together, and we spent 2 years establishing the system that we have. And I grant you, it's complicated, and it took us a long time to come up with a ranking, a point system, but it was the fairest way to figure out, at least to have everybody compensated similarly, maybe unfairly, but at least it was a relatively consistent method. We knew 3 or 4 years ago that we needed to go back and review all these positions, and the work that the committee does every year just to look at the 3 or 4 appeals was relatively time consuming. And I know 2 years ago, Patricia volunteered to take on updating the handbook and to start a project to really start reviewing this process and coming up with something that maybe would be easier to understand and communicating that out. If we turn this over to either the administration or the FA, the easiest thing for them to do is just take a percentage off the top and say, okay, well, that's just the way it is. And I don't know about how many of you are department chairs, but my work has gotten harder, not easier, particularly in the COVID time. So I'm not sure department chairs are going to want to do department chair jobs if their stipends just arbitrarily get cut a certain percentage. So we do have a dilemma, but if we just turn this over to the FA, it's just going to be a flat percentage, and we're going to have to live with it. So I know that March supposedly is our deadline. I would imagine that if the administration felt that we were doing our diligence and really reviewing these, and I don't know, most of you don't know this, but in our committee meetings, we're pretty hard on each other. I mean, we have reviewed stipends that deans have brought to us and said, look, this isn't happening anymore. We have changed stipends, the assessment coordinator stipends that were eliminated, those things were all changed. So we have done that over the years, or review stipends where the job is no longer being done, and we have eliminated those or changed those if the job has changed. So I know that's not considered Senate business, but it is faculty business. And I think that it is really to our benefit to have our committee continue to see if we can come up with a relatively simple way over this next semester, the finishing of this semester, to reduce these stipends. I think we can do that. We really didn't have any meetings in the fall until the very end, so this has been a pretty rushed deal, but I don't think turning it over to either the administration or the FA or a committee that has no idea what's been happening. I mean, this is complex stuff, and it really needs to have at least some people that have been dealing with this for a while. I think we can come up with those deductions.
Okay, I have a response to that, but I want to make sure that other people have a time to speak. Trisha, and then Michelle, and then Cornelia.
Okay, so obviously, I don't think non-credit's involved in this particular thing, but we do get stipends. But as you guys were talking, it was reminding me a little bit about the dilemma when we do the faculty hiring and how we have, well, at least I have a criteria of, how many people does this position serve? If this is going to impact students or functioning, that's necessary for things that are under Senate purview, serving students, student success and all that. And then possibly, I don't know if this would be something that if the people affected or the areas could, get a form and they could present or answer those questions, how many people are affected if this position is eliminated? How many people do you serve? Do you have any, what is the minimum that you could cut away? And they each get like 5 minutes or whatever to present. Would that be something that could work to kind of streamline this process? And I'm an outsider on this, so I don't know if that was helpful or really naive, but I just thought that just occurred to me as you were talking.
So your second comment about the suggestion, yes, that is the work of the committee. That is currently the conversations that are happening. Your first comment about non-credit receiving stipends, that I have to follow up with that comment. That is what I find so confusing about the word, quote, stipends on this campus. So Trisha, the stipends that we're talking about here are not stipends that NTCC would, School of Extended Learning faculty.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah.
So like, I remember Dr. Benjamin mentioning in our budget discussions when she was here that like, we need to look at faculty stipends. And I, even as dialed in as I thought I was to the campus at that point, I didn't know what she meant by that. I thought she meant by the stipends that were given with grant funding, for instance. So I didn't know what she meant by that. Now that I'm the chair of this committee and I saw this spreadsheet and I saw all these, quote, leadership stipends for non-teaching, that's when I realized, which is why it's on the Senate agenda, so that faculty can be more informed. Because I think when Dr. Goswami said, oh, NTCC stipends or leadership stipends, people didn't know what that meant. Like, I remember some people saying like, aren't these grant funded? No, the ones we're talking about aren't grant funded, right? So we're talking about the specific ones on the document that I gave.
Yeah, I understand that. We do have parallels though, and that's why I wanted to kind of put my little 2 cents in, because some of the areas do have general funded, some non-credit areas do have general funded, say, faculty liaisons that kind of do some of the work of the department chairs. So that, but again, I know that's not part of, I don't believe that's part of this committee's fund. It's probably handled separately. But so that was just my disclaimer that I know I don't really have any skin in this game necessarily, except for that I want the campus, to the students to have the support they need. And also realizing that, if some positions in our area were eliminated, that would really put a big burden on faculty, like everyone else is saying, and it could adversely affect our academic, teaching ability if we're, not getting compensated or these necessary duties are not being addressed in a proper way. But I guess my point is that it does seem like really difficult if people could present why they're important and what they'd be willing to cut in a in a one session or something. And I don't know if Senate should be involved in that, or that would be the committee. So because I felt the faculty hiring thing was really interesting. Very helpful how we did that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Trisha. So we only have 8 minutes left, and I want to make sure that I get to people who haven't yet had an opportunity to speak. So Robbie, Cornelia, Anna, and then Patricia in the next 8 minutes. Robbie.
There seemed to be strong sentiment that this was not our purview. And if that is our consensus, then I'm not sure that we should evaluate any of these. And I'm not sure how an ad hoc or subcommittee would do that if the NTCC itself is going to have trouble doing that by March. So I just wanted to say that.
So I'm not sure that I just want to be careful with your words, Robbie. So I'm not sure that there was consensus. There were several people that shared that this is not Senate's purview. But I don't know that there was consensus. We didn't do a straw poll. Not everybody shared, right? So yes, some people shared that. This is a sentiment that I agree with. However, this is the work of the Senate because for whatever historical reasons, the Senate president is the chair of this committee. So yeah, that is the conversation, not the what will the committee do, how will they do it? You know, we don't necessarily need input in that way. It's just, is this the work of the Senate? Is this our purview? If not, what do we want to do with it? That's where I'd like to steer us. Okay.
Yeah, so I said if, you know, it sounded like there might have been, maybe we should find out whether there is consensus.
Yeah, we certainly can. We might have to table this conversation for another meeting, however. Cornelia.
Thank you so much. I want to keep it short. I just want to make sure that in this complexity of the NTCC work, there are a few insights not getting lost. So one insight is if NTCC is not able to identify stipend reductions, the desired amount by March, the administration cannot just go ahead and take stipends away. This is compensation, and compensation is originally a mandated subject of collective bargaining. So if the administration wanted to reduce the stipend, they have to negotiate with the FA. That is, by the way, how it works at every other campus I know of. Again, at Santa Barbara City College, the FA and the Senate historically have reached this agreement of this combined committee, and the existence and the work of this committee is actually defined in the FA contract. So the administration cannot bypass the committee and or the collective bargaining agent, which would be the FA. So with one of us, they have to reach an agreement. That is one. The other part, which I think will add actually to the confusion, the NTCC process has two aspects. And the one is the NTCC, the factors, the NTCC work factors, which are determined by the committee, added together for each position, and then they are multiplied with a compensation factor. And that compensation factor, that is actually negotiated with the FA, and that is in the contract. And when Kathy earlier said the FA can only make a across the base cut, across the field cut, that is the way it is set up. If the FA wanted to make, or if the administration wanted to negotiate only with the FA, that is in fact the way it's at the moment set up. What we could do, the FA could basically agree to a reduction of this factor because the Senate is in NTCC and we would not bypass the process. The FA would not. So did that help or did that confuse more?
So I just want to share that. Remember, okay, so thank you, Cornelia. My comment isn't necessarily in response to that, and I absolutely want to make sure that we get to Anna's question or comment. I just want to say this. Dr. Goswami provided faculty at faculty's request, the CPC Academic Senate appointees, myself, Patricia, Katie Laris, Robbie. I don't think Ruth was at that meeting. I think Pam Gunther was substituting for her at that meeting. We put pressure on Dr. Goswami to come up with and provide us with a 2-year plan. How are we going to get at the $3.5 million? And he asked us not to hold him to that plan in case that, you know, things are changing or that he was just going to come up with a plan and we would have input into it. What I'm trying to do here is have us have a conversation around this $125,000 cut. Remember that other pieces of his 2-year plan included program elimination. One fear that I have as your academic senate president is if we can't get together and figure out this NTCC stuff, that might mean another person's job on campus or a program that we love that supports students. So I am very resistant I want to say here January 13th on this day that I am very worried that if we can't get this work together, that a decision will be made for us. Maybe Dr. Goswami and our administration and the board will realize, oh, we can't cut stipends because they're negotiated and in a contract, as our union president was just sharing with us. What I'm saying is, if they're not going to do that, then might this be a program or something else? I'm not saying it will. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just saying I'm going to go back to what Ruth said at the beginning of this discussion. I fear if we don't get some consensus around this, if we all think as individuals and not collectively, and we're not strategic, that the decision made for us will affect us, will affect somebody's livelihood, will affect our students, will cost somebody their job, we won't have a say in it. So I am very worried about not coming to some consensus around this. So I just want to say that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna.
So being very aware of time, I'm not going to go super in depth here, but I just wanted to share 2 things. One, I think anytime the people who are receiving the payments are the people making the decisions, that brings up major concerns for me. Number 2, I also wonder, I think it's important to have a say. Sorry, my kid is barking. I think it's important, now I lost my train of thought. It's important for historical context. And so I think having folks that have that historical context present as part of the decision-making is important. But I also think it's important to include new perspectives because it kind of sounds like everything is super out of date anyway. And I'm wondering if any of the things that are happening within the context of what has been defined as appropriate NTCC stipends is something that could fit in a different place, or we could look at it and structure it differently. What 2020 has taught me is that the systems that are established are not working for most of us. And this is our opportunity to reevaluate the way that we're doing all of the things. And I would just like to put it out there that I think it's important to get creative and be open to change, and to really emphasize that people who are being the ones getting paid should not be the ones making the decisions about what's going to happen with these stipends. That's my final word for now.
Anna, I don't know if you can see how many head shakings and claps that were happening when you were talking. So I just want to call out that, that you were getting a lot of support. I will also say, you know, I thought Anna was going to take her comment in a different direction, so I'll just leave the meeting with this. Anna and Trisha are part-time senators, and part-timers do not receive these stipends. And something that is not talked about a lot is that our part-timers are the ones that are having their classes eliminated, and as soon as their classes are eliminated, their jobs are eliminated. And that's not going to be as revolutionary or as obvious as, oh, we laid off a full-time faculty member or we eliminated this program. The part-timers have already had their classes cut and their assignments cut already, and it's going to continue to happen. So again, only, and Robin's given a thumbs up, only about 60 faculty, full-time faculty members are receiving these stipends. At our faculty town hall, you know, some people mention like pay cuts or benefit cuts across the board. So that would affect everybody a little bit. These stipends are received by the few. So again, coming back to equity, I really liked what Anna had to say, like doing things a little bit different, approaching this in a different way. This might be the time for that, but it is going to come at a cost for the Academic Senate. And so again, I want us to leave this meeting thinking about whether or not this is Senate purview, and if not, how we can contribute to this process and make sure that we are being a huge part of the planning and the shaping of our future college. So with that, we need a motion to adjourn.
Does that mean that this is going to get tabled? Because I definitely do have more to say. I'm just conscious of the fact that the meeting's over.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I really appreciate that. Absolutely. We are definitely not done. We're just out of time. So it's going to be agendized at a future meeting for sure. Probably our next one, but that's the decision of the Senate steering. Michelle, what's up?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Have a great night. I hope everybody's week gets a whole lot better than it's been this year. Thank you very much, Franny. Have a greet night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Now.